Flieger. Flieger, or airman, was the lowest enlisted rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a private in the US Air Force and an aircraftman second class in the Royal Air Force. This rank referred to newly enlisted personnel undergoing basic training or assigned general duties such as aircraft maintenance, ground support, or logistics assistance. They held no command authority and were fully subordinate to higher ranks. Most airmen remained at this level for around 6 months before being considered for promotion to Gefreiter. The shoulder board for Flieger was a plain dark strap with a single button and no piping or insignia, used universally for all entry-level enlisted men. Gefreiter. Gefreiter, or private, was the second enlisted rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a private in the US Air Force and an aircraftman first class in the Royal Air Force. This rank was typically reached after around 6 months to 1 year of service, following satisfactory performance and completion of initial duties. Airmen at this level carried out technical and logistical support tasks, often assisting in maintenance, refueling, and airfield operations under direct supervision. They held no formal command authority, but were regarded as reliable and experienced within their units. The shoulder board for Gefreiter was dark in colour, with a single button and narrow piping along the edge, while the sleeve displayed one downward-pointing chevron, denoting their first promotion above Flieger. Obergefreiter. Obergefreiter, or senior private, was the third enlisted rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a senior airman in the US Air Force and a leading aircraftman in the Royal Air Force. This rank was usually achieved after 1 to 2 years of satisfactory service, reflecting growing technical experience and reliability. Airmen at this level often supervised small maintenance teams or assisted NCOs with daily airfield operations. They still lacked formal command authority but carried significant practical responsibility. The shoulder board for Obergefreiter was dark in colour with narrow piping, and the sleeve bore 2 downward-pointing chevrons. Hauptgefreiter. Hauptgefreiter, or senior corporal, was the fourth enlisted rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a corporal in the US Air Force and a senior leading aircraftman in the Royal Air Force. This rank was typically attained after 2 to 3 years of continuous service, demonstrating skill and reliability in both technical and support duties. Airmen at this level often supervised small work details or assisted NCOs in airfield operations. The shoulder board for Hauptgefreiter was dark in colour with narrow piping, while the sleeve insignia displayed 3 downward-pointing chevrons. Stabsgefreiter. Stabsgefreiter, or senior corporal, was the 5th and highest enlisted rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a senior corporal in the US Air Force and a senior leading aircraftman in the Royal Air Force. This rank was typically achieved after 3 to 4 years of consistent service, recognizing superior technical proficiency and dependability. Airmen at this level often led small maintenance crews, supervised ground tasks, or assisted non-commissioned officers in coordinating operations. The shoulder board for Stabsgefreiter was dark in colour with narrow piping, and the sleeve insignia displayed 2 chevrons topped by a diamond-shaped pip. Unteroffizier Anwärter, Unteroffizier Anwärter, or NCO Candidate, was a transitional status within the Luftwaffe for enlisted men selected to become non-commissioned officers. It was equivalent to a sergeant trainee in the US Air Force and a non-commissioned officer cadet in the Royal Air Force. Candidates were chosen from experienced enlisted personnel, often after 2 to 3 years of reliable service. They continued regular duties while receiving leadership and discipline training under supervision. The shoulder board for Unteroffizier Anwärter remained the same as their current enlisted rank, but featured two short horizontal silver bars at the end to indicate cadet status and forthcoming promotion to Unteroffizier. Fahnenjunker. The Fahnenjunker track represented the Luftwaffe's structured pathway for future officers. It was equivalent to an officer cadet in the US Air Force and a pilot officer cadet in the Royal Air Force. The progression included Fahnenjunker, Fähnrich, and Oberfähnrich, typically reached after 2 to 3 years of military schooling and technical training. Cadets at this stage prepared for flight, navigation, and command roles. Their shoulder boards resembled officer patterns, but featured two short horizontal silver bars at the end, distinguishing them from standard NCOs. Upon successful evaluation, they were commissioned as Leutnant, the first officer rank. Unteroffizier, or sergeant, was the first non-commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a staff sergeant in the US Air Force and a corporal in the Royal Air Force. This rank was normally attained after 3 to 4 years of service and marked the beginning of formal leadership duties. Unteroffiziere supervised small air or ground crews, ensured maintenance standards, and reported directly to Feldwebel superiors. The shoulder board was dark in colour, with a silver edge and single button, identical to Unterfeldwebel, while the sleeve insignia featured one double-wing chevron, indicating junior NCO status. Unterfeldwebel. Unterfeldwebel, or Staff Sergeant, was the second non-commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a technical sergeant in the US Air Force and a sergeant in the Royal Air Force. Promotion to this rank generally followed 1 to 2 years of satisfactory NCO service and demonstrated competence in managing personnel and flight line operations. Unterfeldwebel supervised larger ground or air detachments and maintained discipline among subordinates. The shoulder board was identical to Unteroffizier, dark with a silver edge and single button, while the sleeve insignia featured two double-wing chevrons, marking seniority within the junior NCO tier. Feldwebel. Feldwebel, or Sergeant Major, was the third non-commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a Master Sergeant in the US Air Force and a Flight Sergeant in the Royal Air Force. Promotion generally followed 5 to 6 years of reliable service, recognizing leadership and advanced technical expertise. Feldwebel personnel commanded maintenance sections or flight teams, trained recruits, and oversaw operational readiness on air bases. The shoulder board was dark in colour, with a bright silver edge and a single silver pip near the end, symbolising authority within the experienced NCO cadre. Oberfeldwebel. Oberfeldwebel, or Master Sergeant, was the fourth non-commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a Senior Master Sergeant in the US Air Force and a Warrant Officer Class II in the Royal Air Force. Promotion generally required 6 to 8 years of total service, with extensive experience in leadership and aircraft operations. Oberfeldwebel personnel often managed entire maintenance sections or oversaw training for junior NCOs. The shoulder board was dark with a silver edge and displayed two silver pips arranged lengthwise, signifying higher authority and seniority within the NCO structure. Stabsfeldwebel. Stabsfeldwebel, or Chief Master Sergeant, was the highest non-commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a Chief Master Sergeant in the US Air Force and a Warrant Officer Class I in the Royal Air Force. Promotion generally followed 10 or more years of distinguished service, recognising exceptional leadership and organisational skill. Stabsfeldwebel personnel often served as senior advisors to officers, managing large maintenance sections or air-based logistics. The shoulder board was dark with a silver edge and featured 3 silver pips, representing the pinnacle of NCO authority in the Luftwaffe. Leutnant. Leutnant, or second lieutenant, was the first commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a second lieutenant in the US Air Force and a pilot officer in the Royal Air Force. Promotion to this level followed successful completion of officer cadet training, typically after 2 to 3 years of specialised instruction and field experience. Lieutenants commanded small flight units or administrative sections under senior officers. The shoulder board featured an interwoven silver braid over a dark base with a single button, symbolising the entry point into the Luftwaffe's officer corps. Oberleutnant, or first lieutenant, was the second commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a first lieutenant in the US Air Force and a flying officer in the Royal Air Force. Promotion generally followed 1 to 2 years of service as a lieutenant and recognised growing leadership ability. Oberleutnants typically led flight detachments, coordinated squadron missions, or served as deputy commanders. The shoulder board featured a silver braid over a dark base with 1 gold pip, identifying their position as intermediate officers within the Luftwaffe hierarchy. Hauptmann or captain was the third commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a captain in the US Air Force and a flight lieutenant in the Royal Air Force. Promotion generally followed 3 to 5 years of service as an Oberleutnant, recognising full leadership and administrative responsibility. Hauptmann officers typically commanded squadrons, flight detachments, or specialised ground units. The shoulder board was silver braided with a dark base and featured 2 gold pips arranged lengthwise, signifying their authority as mid-level officers within both operational and administrative branches of the Luftwaffe. Major. Major was the 4th commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a major in the US Air Force and a squadron leader in the Royal Air Force. Promotion typically came after 8 to 10 years of service, recognising strong leadership, operational planning, and combat experience. Majors commanded squadrons or administrative departments, often overseeing several flight units or technical divisions. The shoulder board featured an intricate silver braid over a dark base with a gold border, marking the transition from company grade to field grade officer status within the Luftwaffe command hierarchy. Oberstleutnant or lieutenant colonel was the 5th commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a lieutenant colonel in the US Air Force and a wing commander in the Royal Air Force. Promotion generally followed 12 to 15 years of service and recognised seasoned command and organisational leadership. Oberstleutnants often oversaw multiple squadrons or served as deputy commanders of air wings and base units. The shoulder board featured a silver braid over a dark base with 1 gold pip, reflecting their senior field grade officer status within the Luftwaffe hierarchy. Oberst or colonel was the 6th commissioned officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a colonel in the US Air Force and a group captain in the Royal Air Force. Officers at this level possessed extensive command experience, usually after 15 to 18 years of service. They commanded air regiments, training schools or air bases, and were often entrusted with strategic planning duties. The shoulder board displayed a silver braid over a dark base with 2 gold pips aligned lengthwise, denoting their authority as senior field grade officers within the Luftwaffe structure. General Major or Brigadier General was the 1st general officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a Brigadier General in the US Air Force and an Air Commodore in the Royal Air Force. Promotion to this rank marked entry into the Luftwaffe's General Staff, typically following many years of distinguished command service. General Majors directed large air units, commanded regional defence sectors, or coordinated divisional logistics and training. The shoulder board consisted of an interwoven gold braid with a dark underlay, symbolizing the beginning of the Luftwaffe's general officer hierarchy. General Leutnant. General Leutnant, or Major General, was the second general officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a Major General in the US Air Force and an Air Vice Marshal in the Royal Air Force. Promotion typically followed service as a General Major and reflected mastery of both strategic command and administrative control. General Lieutenants commanded entire air divisions or corps, overseeing flight operations, logistics, and regional air defence networks. The shoulder board featured an interwoven gold braid with a dark underlay and one silver pip positioned near the centre, representing seniority within the Luftwaffe's general officer ranks. General der Waffengattung. General der Waffengattung, or General of the Branch, was the third general officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a Lieutenant General in the US Air Force and an Air Marshal in the Royal Air Force. This rank represented specialization across major operational branches. General der Flieger, General of the Flyers, General der Fallschirmtruppe, parachute troops, General der Flakartillerie, anti-aircraft artillery, and General der Luftnachrichtentruppe, air signal troops. Officers at this level commanded entire corps or defence networks. The shoulder board displayed an interwoven gold braid with two silver pips, symbolizing senior authority. General Oberst. General Oberst, or Colonel General, was the fourth general officer rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a general in the US Air Force and an Air Chief Marshal in the Royal Air Force. Officers at this level typically commanded entire air fleets or large regional commands, exercising authority over thousands of personnel and aircraft. Promotion to this rank reflected exceptional strategic leadership and long service. The shoulder board displayed an interwoven gold braid with a dark underlay and three silver pips, signifying their position just below the supreme rank of General Feldmarschall. General Feldmarschall. General Feldmarschall, or Field Marshal, was the highest rank in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. It was equivalent to a General of the Army in the US Air Force and a Marshal of the Royal Air Force in the United Kingdom. This prestigious rank was reserved for commanders with exceptional military achievement or long-term strategic leadership of entire theatres of war. General Feldmarschall exercised authority over all Luftwaffe formations and reported directly to the German High Command. The shoulder board featured an interwoven gold braid with a dark underlay and cross batons emblem, symbolizing supreme command within the Luftwaffe hierarchy. Reichsmarschall. Reichsmarschall, or Marshal of the Reich, was the honorary military rank in the Luftwaffe and the entire German armed forces during the Second World War. This title was unique, created specifically for Hermann Göring in 1940, and had no direct equivalent in either the US or British Air Forces. It stood above the rank of General Feldmarschall and represented supreme authority within the Luftwaffe. The shoulder board was an interwoven gold braid without dark underlay, surmounted by a large gold Luftwaffe eagle clutching crossed marshal's batons, marking it as a ceremonial and political position rather than an operational command within the Luftwaffe hierarchy.